This is Community Radio Networks. Today is Thursday, the 25th of April. And we have all the information here for you to take on the day. Let's start with the world news right here on Community Radio Networks. This is Community Radio Networks, the world news, read by Shabnam Madgil. Campus protests over Israel's war in Gaza have spread across the United States. Police are clashing with protesters in New York, at the University of Austin in Texas, where there were arrests, and in Los Angeles at the University of Southern California. After a tense night of negotiations and protests at Columbia University, leaders on campus have agreed to extend talks with pro-Palestinian student protester encampments for another 48 hours. It comes as the Speaker of the House of Representatives Mike Johnson called on university president to quit if the protests are not brought under control. School administrators initially set a midnight deadline for encampments to disband from campus, but changed their tune around 3 a.m. after students agreed to remove some tents and non-students, as well as stop discriminatory or harassing language among protesters. Some Jewish students have faced anti-Semitic harassment, leading to safety concerns on campus. Columbia University students heckled House Speaker Mike Johnson yesterday as he visited the flashpoint of nationwide student demonstrations over the Israeli onslaught in Gaza, even as the New York school agreed to 48 more hours of negotiations to end this protest encampment. Speaker Mike Johnson suggesting the National Guard should soon be called in to quell the Gaza ceasefire protests at Columbia University if they don't peter out themselves. The number of pro-Palestine protesters who were arrested during a demonstration at the University of Texas has now risen to 34 as of last night. Police peacefully arrested these student protesters at the University of Southern California, hours after police at the Texas University aggressively detained dozens in latest clashes between law enforcement and those protesting the Israel-Hamas war on campuses. While tensions rose between police and protesters at the USC, in the evening, a few dozen demonstrators standing in a circle with locked arms were detained one by one without incident. Los Angeles Police Department confirming the arrest of 94 people participating in these demonstrations against Israel's onslaught on Gaza at the University of Southern California. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has condemned the pro-Palestinian student protests in the United States universities as horrific, saying the demonstrations have to be stopped. A memorial at the National Cathedral in Washington honoring the 7 World Central KitchenAid workers killed by Israeli airstrikes in Gaza earlier this month. Jose Andres, the celebrity chef and philanthropist behind the Washington-based World Central Kitchen Disaster Relief Group, is expected to speak at the celebration of life service, and famed cellist Yo-Yo Ma will perform. The Biden administration has said that Douglas Emhoff, the husband of Vice President Kamala Harris, and U.S. Assistant Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell would be among senior administration figures who will be attending. The White House says it wants answers from Israeli authorities after the discovery of mass graves at the Gaza hospitals destroyed in Israeli sieges. Palestinian civil defense teams have recovered 324 dead bodies at the Nasser hospital as of last night, and at least 34,305 Palestinians have been killed and over 77,000 wounded in Israel's military offensive on Gaza since the 7th of October. More than 430 Israeli settlers stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in occupied East Jerusalem. And Israeli police have evacuated extremist minister Itamar Ben-Gvir from a building in West Jerusalem that was surrounded by protesters, including families of captives in besieged Gaza. A top Hamas political official has said that the Islamist militant group is willing to agree to a truce of 5 years or more with Israel, and that it would lay down its weapons and convert into a political party if an independent Palestinian state is established along the pre-1967 borders. 1967 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 borders. And it is Jane Egeland, who's the Secretary General of the Norwegian Refugee Council, warning that the fighting in Gaza has pushed Lebanon to the brink of imploding. Britain's maritime agency and the security firm Ambre have received reports of an incident this morning around 15 nautical miles southwest of the Yemeni port of Aden, and ships have been advised to proceed with caution and report any incidents. A Greek military vessel serving in the European Union's naval mission in the Red Sea intercepted 2 drones launched by Yemen's Houthi militants towards a commercial ship. Houthis once again targeting ships in the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean to protest against Israel's war in Gaza. Rebels unleashed drones targeted American vessel Maersk Yorktown, and the warship was attacked with missiles in the Gulf of Aden. And another Israeli ship, the MSC Veracruz, was targeted with drones in the Indian Ocean. A reluctant Donald Trump will be back in a New York City courtroom today as his hush money trial resumes at the same time that the U.S. Supreme Court hears arguments in Washington over whether he should be immune from prosecution for actions he took during his time as president. Jurors will hear more witness testimony from a longtime tabloid publisher, and Trump faces a looming decision over whether he violated a gag order imposed by the judge. Though 200 miles apart, the entirely separate cases, the proceedings today jumbled together in one big legal and political puzzle that has implications not just for the presumptive Republican presidential nominee, but for the American presidency writ large. In both instances, Trump is trying to get himself out of legal jeopardy as he makes another bid for the White House. But the outcome of the Supreme Court case, I do beg your pardon, that will have lasting implications for future presidents, because the justices will be answering the never-before-asked question of whether, and if so, to what extent does a former president enjoy presidential immunity from criminal prosecution for the conduct alleged to involve official acts during his tenure in office. The New York trial resumes after a scheduled day off yesterday with more testimony from Manhattan District Attorney's first witness, David Pecker, the former publisher of the National Enquirer and a longtime friend of Trump's, who's pledged to be his eyes and ears during his 2016 presidential campaign. He has testified that he volunteered to publish positive stories about Trump and negative stories about his opponents, but that wasn't all. Rudy Giuliani, meanwhile, a former lawyer for Donald Trump, is among 18 people charged in Arizona with illegally seeking to claim the state's 2020 electoral votes for then U.S. president in an indictment that names Trump as an unindicted co-conspirator. And President Biden has granted clemency to 16 people who were convicted of nonviolent drug crimes, issuing pardons to 11 men and women and commuting the sentences of 5 other people in the latest use of his clemency power to address racial disparities in the justice system. And he said in a statement yesterday that April is second chance month and that many of the individuals getting clemency had received disproportionately longer sentences than they would have under current law. An Arizona grand jury has handed up felony charges against Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows, and other prominent Trump allies for allegedly attempting to prevent the lawful transfer of power from then President Trump to Joe Biden. And the Arizona House has narrowly voted to repeal a near-total abortion ban dating from 1864, capping 3 weeks of efforts that have galvanized national attention. The 32-28 vote came after passionate speeches from most Republicans who described abortion in graphic detail and as contrary to Republican values. And less than a month after the justices heard oral arguments in a case seeking to roll back access to one of the drugs used in medication abortions, the Supreme Court will hear oral arguments in another case involving abortion. At issue, Moyle versus United States and Idaho versus United States, whether emergency rooms in Idaho can provide abortions to pregnant women in an emergency. Bowie High School in Arlington here in North Texas placed on lockdown yesterday afternoon due to an on-campus shooting that took place outside the school. Arlington PD and the Arlington School District held a joint press conference and confirmed an unidentified 18-year-old student was shot and has died as a result of his injuries. A 17-year-old student is now in custody. Arlington ISD has canceled classes at Bowie High School for today. More than 3 weeks after his high-speed hit-and-run crash In Dallas, it looks like there's another lawsuit naming Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice. A Kansas City TV station citing Dallas court documents reports that Rice and a friend have been named in another lawsuit filed by one of the other drivers, Kamlesh Desai. This new lawsuit is on top of the first lawsuits filed in Dallas County by Irina Gromova and Edward Petrovsky. Dallas police say Rice was going nearly 120 miles an hour racing his friend, SMU player Theodore Knox, who was driving another car that was registered in Rice's name. Surgeons at New York University's Langone Health Center have successfully transplanted a gene-edited pig kidney in tandem with a mechanical heart pump implant. The first of its kind combination procedure could increase access to life-saving treatment for people with multiple chronic illnesses, typically ineligible for human organ donation. Over 100,000 people are currently on the national transplant waiting list. The U.S. delivered long-range missiles to Ukraine earlier this month that the Biden administration had previously refused to send following a directive from President Biden, according to the Pentagon. He secretly approved the transfer of the long-range ATACMS missiles in February for use inside Ukrainian territory. These missiles were then quietly included in the $300 million aid package that was announced on the 12th of March and ultimately delivered to Ukraine earlier this month. And Ukraine, for the first time, has begun using long-range ballistic missiles provided secretly by the United States, bombing a Russian military airfield in Crimea last week and Russian forces in another occupied area overnight. Russia vetoed a UN resolution sponsored by the U.S. and Japan calling on all nations to prevent a dangerous nuclear arms race in outer space, calling it a dirty spectacle that cherry-picks weapons of mass destruction from all other weapons that should also be banned. The vote in the 15-member Security Council was 13 in favor, Russia opposed, and China abstaining. Poland has provided Ukraine military support worth the equivalent of around $9 billion over the past 2 years. And Hungary's nationalist prime minister, addressing a conservative conference in Budapest this morning, said upcoming European and U.S. elections were a chance for right-wing forces to defeat the progressive world spirit and encourage former U.S. President Trump to defend his own truth in his ongoing criminal trial. Italy commemorated today the end of its occupation by Nazi Germany in 1945 with a memorial service in Rome. President Sergio Mattarella laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier as Prime Minister Giorgio Meloni and the presidents of both chambers of parliament looked on. Meloni is the leader of the largest governing party, the right-wing populist Brothers of Italy, which has its roots in neo-fascist movements born after World War II. And a number of military horses, including one covered in blood, ran amok in the streets of central London and injured at least 4 people. The horses belong to the Household Cavalry, which acts as the British monarch's official bodyguard and takes part in ceremonial duties. They are garrisoned at the Hyde Park barracks, less than a mile away from the Buckingham Palace. But this bizarre scenes unfolded in the heart of London, near Buckingham Palace and the seat of the British government, with the runaway animals galloping past bewildered Londoners going about their morning commute. Britain's King Charles has granted his approval to the legislation that is crucial for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's strategy to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. Rwanda says it's ready to receive the migrants from the UK after British Parliament this week approved a long-stalled and controversial bill seeking to stem the tide of people crossing the English Channel in small boats by deporting some of them to the East African country. Botswana's foreign minister said his country had been approached by the UK to take some of what he called their unwanted immigrants, but declined the request. Spain's Rafael Nadal said he is not sure if he will be able to play at next month's French Open after pushing through the pain barrier in his comeback from injury. The 37-year-old 22-time Grand Slam champion said he is far from being in top form and that he's only playing against American Darwin Blanche in the first round of the Madrid Open today as a personal sacrifice. The International Cricket Council has named Olympic legend Usain Bolt as an ambassador for the upcoming ICC Men's T20 World Cup, which will be played in the West Indies and the United States from the 1st to the 29th of June. Bolt currently holds world records in the 100-meter, 200-meter, and 100-meter times of 9.58 seconds, 19.9 seconds, and 36.84 seconds. And this announcement comes a few weeks ahead of the start of cricket's biggest T20 spectacle ever that'll inspire a new generation of fans. More than 220 civilians, including at least 56 children, were massacred by Burkina Faso's military in a single day this year, according to the Human Rights Watch. In the attacks on the 25th of February, the army killed 179 people in Soro village and 44 others in nearby Nondin village. More than 100 inmates have escaped from a prison in Nigeria near the capital city of Abuja after overnight heavy rains destroyed parts of the facility as security agencies searched for the fleeing prisoners. Roads have turned into rivers in the Kenyan capital of Nairobi as a top official said flooding had escalated to extreme levels. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has raised concern over unfair trade practices in the world's number 2 economy as he began talks in China with the threat of U.S. sanctions and Beijing for its support of Russia looming over his visit. He called today on the United States and China to manage their differences responsibly as he went on a charm offensive ahead of expected tough talks. And it is China achieving a significant milestone in lunar exploration and scientific research by releasing the world's first complete high-definition geologic atlas of the moon. Available in both Chinese and English, this all-encompassing atlas comprises the geological atlas of the lunar globe and the map quadrangles of the geological atlas of the moon. The release of these atlases marks a crucial advancement for future lunar research and exploration. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Community Radio Networks. North Korea condemned new efforts to monitor sanctions enforcement against it and warned the U.S. of an upward readjustment of force in response. More than 160 pilot whales became stranded off the coast of Western Australia today in shallow waters near the small town of Dunsborough, some 250 kilometers south of Perth. India's Election Commission has said it has sought responses from the ruling BJP and the opposition Congress on alleged violations of poll rules by Prime Minister Modi and opposition leader Rahul Gandhi. India is holding the world's largest election over 7 phases, with votes due to be counted on the 4th of June. And the Ministry of External Affairs today rejected the U.S. State Department's report on alleged human rights abuses in India and called it deeply biased. Addressing a press conference, it was the Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal who said, "This report is deeply biased and reflects a poor understanding of India. We attach no value to it and urge you to do the same." Earlier this week, the U.S. State Department released a report alleging significant human rights abuses in Manipur after the outbreak of ethnic conflicts. And this report released by Secretary of State Antony Blinken mentioned some of the positive developments on the issue of human rights and freedom of expression and gathering in the year 2023. Lakhs of voters will have to bear the searing heat when they step out to exercise their franchise in the second phase of the Lok Sabha elections tomorrow. The Indian Meteorological Department warned of heat waves to severe heat wave conditions in parts of West Bengal, Odisha, Bihar, Jharkhand, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Karnataka and Uttar Pradesh during the next 5 days. And the Election Commission, taking cognizance for the first time of a model code violation complaint, issued notice to BJP Chief J.P. Nadda on the opposition's charge that Prime Minister Modi gave a divisive speech in Rajasthan's Banswara. The poll body also issued a notice to Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge asking him to respond to the complaints filed by the BJP against him and Rahul Gandhi regarding their remarks. Karnataka Chief Minister Siddaramaiah criticized Prime Minister Modi for making illegal allegations against Congress regarding transfer reservation quota from backward classes to Muslims, calling it a blatant lie. And as Karnataka gears up for an intense Lok Sabha election, the political landscape is marked by intriguing battles, strategic alliances, and the prominence of community dynamics. As Bengaluru gears up for the election, the city's political landscape reveals a curious blend of tradition and change. And despite its reputation as a hub of innovation and progress, entrenched patterns in voting behavior suggest a resilient adherence to caste, religion, and party affiliations. With the upcoming poll stirring anticipation, the stage is set for a gripping showdown across the city's 4 Lok Sabha seats. Sunrisers Hyderabad will look to unleash their brute batting power on struggling Royal Challengers Bengaluru when the two teams face off in their return leg fixture of the IPL in Hyderabad today. Delhi Capitals captain and wicketkeeper Rishabh Pant has secured the fourth position among the wicketkeepers with the highest number of dismissals in the IPL. He has achieved 92 dismissals in the tournament, while MS Dhoni, the former Chennai Super Kings skipper, leads the list with 185 dismissals. Delhi Capitals captain Rishabh Pant also set a new record in T20 cricket during his team's IPL clash against the Gujarat Titans at the Arun Jaitley Stadium. The left-handed wicketkeeper batter amassed an unbeaten 88 runs off just 43 deliveries, which included 5 fours and 8 sixes at an impressive strike rate of 204.65. What stood out in his innings was his assault on pacer Mohit Sharma, against whom he scored 62 runs in a mere 18 balls. Tamanna Bhatia has been summoned by the Maharashtra Cyber Cell regarding her alleged involvement in the illegal streaming of IPL matches. Scheduled for questioning on the 29th of this month, the actress is expected to shed light on her role in the case. Similarly, Sanjay Dutt's name has surfaced in connection with the matter, prompting authorities to request his appearance for interrogation earlier this week. However, his hectic schedule has led to a postponement, with the actor seeking a new date to comply with that inquiry. Both Tamanna and Sanjay stand accused of promoting and endorsing a subsidiary app of the Mahadev betting application. And prior to this, singer Badshah and the managers of Jacqueline Fernandez and Sanjay Dutt underwent questioning by the Cyber Cell. The Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary in Madhya Pradesh is set to receive 5 to 8 cheetahs in the second half of this year, with a focus on breeding and favorable weather conditions. A South African delegation recently visited India to assess the preparations at Gandhi Sagar and the progress of the project in the Kuno National Park. The Taliban government has entered the first stage of discussions with the United Nations, donors and non-governmental organizations over the impact of climate change in Afghanistan. After 4 decades of war, Afghanistan is ranked as one of the countries least prepared to tackle the effects of climate change that are spurring extreme weather conditions and warping natural environments. Neighbors Pakistan and Iran pledged to enhance efforts at a united front against Afghanistan-based militants, saying their presence poses a serious threat to regional and global security. And the countries, which share a long and porous border, made the commitment in a joint statement issued after a 3-day visit by Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi to Islamabad. And the Iranian president met with Pakistani President Asif Ali Zardari, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, and other officials, including powerful Army Chief General Asim Munir. MQM Supremo Altaf Hussain appeared in a UK High Court this week as part of a 2-day hearing in his appeal against the MQMP in a case related to London properties. The court heard arguments from both sides and reserved its verdict, which is expected later this week. The MQM had split into 2 factions, the MQM London and the MQM Pakistan, in August of 2016 after Mr. Hussein's speech triggered violence in Karachi. Pakistan will be missing one of their batting mainstays in the penultimate 2020 international against New Zealand, but the other, Captain Babar Azam, that of course was Rizwan, who's been ruled out, but Babar Azam, hopeful that his side will bounce back from their dispiriting loss in the last game by winning the 5-match series. The series is level at 1-1 after depleted New Zealand, shorn of their big names due to their involvement in the IPL, stunned Pakistan by clinching the 3rd game by 7 wickets, and now the hosts will also be missing one of their star players, Rizwan. It is no good news for Pakistan hockey, which is already struggling badly for survival while facing crises and setbacks of all kinds. Amid internal wrangling within the Pakistan Hockey Federation, the International Hockey Federation gave a brief yet somber message to the federation, which has witnessed a growing tussle for control between 2 rival groups in recent months. And Defence Minister Khwaja Asif has rejected PTI Chairman Barrister Gohar Khan's claims that former Premier Imran Khan was being pressured to accept a deal. In an interview that was published yesterday, he said there is no truth in claims of pressuring Imran Khan to come to the negotiating table. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news, but I do have your financial news coming up in just a minute. Stay with us right here on Community Radio Networks. Let's get you all the financial news that you need to know right now on community radio networks. And today, ladies and gentlemen, is Thursday, the 25th of April. And we'll start with our foreign currency exchange rates. The Indian rupee is at 83.32, Pakistani rupee at 278.52, Bangladeshi taka at 109.75, Sri Lankan rupee 297.04, and the Nepalese rupee at 133.38. The British pound at 0.80, the euro 0.93, the Canadian dollar 1.37, and the Australian dollar 1.54. Mexican peso 17.25, Chinese yuan 7.25, Japanese yen 155.62. And the Russian ruble at 91.49, Thai baht 37.08, and Turkish lira 32.55. Investors are looking for the next policy domino to fall in Asia amid an escalating campaign against a resurgent dollar after Indonesia used a surprise interest rate hike to defend the rupiah. The currencies of Japan, South Korea, Thailand, Taiwan, Malaysia, the Philippines, and India are all trading within sight of multi-year lows, raising the odds for local authorities to take firm action to stem that slide. The won and the ringgit swaps, for example, are already pricing in a less dovish stance by the two local central banks. Technology stocks dragged down U.S. equity futures this morning after a disappointing outlook from Meta platforms cranked up the pressure on tech giants in a high-stakes earnings wheel. Nasdaq 100 contracts fallen 1%, with Meta accounting for more than half of that decline, and the Facebook parent has tumbled as much as 15%. And that, of course, happened in pre-market trading today after it projected second quarter sales below analyst expectations and increased spending estimates for the year. Alphabet Inc., which reports earnings later, along with Microsoft Corporation, has dropped. S&P 500 futures have slid 0.7%. Techs led this retreat in U.S. stocks today as Meta's revenue forecast rattled investors eyeing the next high-stakes mega-cap earnings, while a GDP update ahead is set to revive the rate cut debate. Meta shares have sank more than Well, at the moment, I see that they have plunged 16% in extending trading yesterday and 12% as they stand right now as the market balked at the rising cost at the Facebook and Instagram owner, which plans to spend up to $10 billion on AI infrastructure investments. Meta reporting its first quarter earnings, and while it beat analyst expectations on the top and bottom lines, a disappointing Q2 forecast sent shares of the social media giant plummeting in this morning. Meta, the company that owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, surprised these investors by announcing it is going to spend more on artificial intelligence, now expecting to spend between $35 billion and $40 billion this year on building AI systems and infrastructure. Microsoft will report its fiscal third quarter earnings after the bell today, as Wall Street continues to look for signs that the AI explosion is more than just hype. Shares of IBM fell more than 8% in pre-market trading today as its consulting business faces pressure from enterprises tightening their budgets to cope with an uncertain economy and high interest rates. IBM and Hashi Corporation, Inc., a leading multi-cloud infrastructure automation company, announced they have entered into a definitive agreement under which IBM will acquire Hashi Corporation for $35 per share in cash, representing an enterprise value of $6.4 billion. Comcast beat quarterly revenue estimates today, driven by higher than expected subscriber growth at its Peacock streaming service and strong attendance at its theme parks. Peacock added 3 million subscribers in the first quarter, taking its total to 34 million and outpacing estimates of 2.32 million by Visible Alpha, thanks to higher investment that Comcast hopes will help it compete better with Netflix and Disney+. Revenues at the streaming service have risen about 54% from a year earlier, helping Comcast report a total revenue of $30.06 billion. American Airlines forecast current quarter profit largely above analyst expectations today amid a rebound in business travel and expectations of strong demand in the upcoming summer season. Shares of the carrier up 4%. Southwest Airlines slashed its estimates for new aircraft deliveries from Boeing this year for the third time today and said it plans to undertake cost-cutting measures to ease the resultant blow. Royal Caribbean Caribbean Group has raised its annual profit forecast for a second time after record bookings during the first quarter, and higher ticket pricing boosted its results, and shares of the cruise operator have risen about 4%. Merck & Company today raised its annual profit and revenue forecast on the back of strong sales for its blockbuster cancer drug, Keytruda, sending the company's shares up more than 2% before the bell today. The Biden administration today finalized a highly anticipated suite of rules to cut hazardous planet-warming pollution generated by power plants in one of its most significant environment and climate actions to date. EPA's new rules will compel coal and new natural gas power plants to either cut or capture 90% of their climate pollution by the year 2032. JP Morgan Chase and Company's India head of equity capital markets, Abhinav Bharati, has returned to the bank after initially handing in his notice in March with plans to join another lender. He is on gardening leave, agreed to rejoin JP Morgan after his intended replacement, Arvind Vashish, decided to stay at Citigroup Inc. Shares of Chipotle Mexican Grill are soaring after the company reported better than expected first quarter earnings, and the restaurant chain posted revenue of $2.7 billion in line with expectations of $2.67 billion. San Francisco-based AI startup Cognition Labs has raised $175 million in a funding round led by Founders Fund, and their 6-month-old company, which recently launched an AI-powered coding assistant called Devin, is now valued at $2 billion. The Justice Department is conducting a criminal investigation into consulting firm McKinsey related to its past role in advising some of the nation's largest opioid manufacturers on how to boost sales. A new report has found that with inflation and high interest rates taking their toll on Americans, many have been forced to rely on credit to pay for their everyday expenses. And the American dream has long included that aspiration of home ownership, and despite the economic obstacles in a volatile housing market, it remains, though, a priority for the majority of Americans. A staggering 78% of people in the U.S. still consider owning a home an integral part of this dream. In celebration of its 34th anniversary, and we'll talk about it when we do the stories from the Annals of History in the final segment that will be coming up soon. It is NASA's Hubble Space Telescope that has once again wowed astronomers and space enthusiasts alike by capturing an extraordinary image of the little Dumbbell Nebula. This latest image offers a vivid glimpse into the complexities of a planetary nebula, demonstrating Hubble's enduring capabilities in its extended mission. You may be familiar with the tale of Noah's Ark, and now it seems scientists are plotting to create a Noah space station of sorts, and the location would be the moon. The idea would involve the creation of a biorepository on the surface of the moon that would serve as a storage facility for endangered plants and cells from endangered animals. Nearly 70% of parents in the U.S. don't think the country's standard diet is healthy for their children. This according to the poll results released this week. This may reflect parent recognition that the standard American diet is characterized by high amounts of saturated fats, added sugar, sodium, and refined carbohydrates, which can generate an excess intake of calories beyond nutritional needs. And with the never-ending debate over whether adults should be consuming milk at all, the question remains how many grown-ups are still drinking it. And with the explosion of popular plant-based milks in recent years, are adults shifting their drinking habits or sticking with traditional milk? And according to this poll, it is adults that still drink some type of milk at least occasionally. 52% said that. 31 rarely or never drink any type of milk. Interestingly, whole milk and 2% cow's milk emerged as the top choices of milk, preferred by 32% and 22% of the respondents. And on the other end of the spectrum, only 9% opt for plant-based milk, with 54 of those favoring almond milk, followed by 24% choosing oat milk. The Food and Drug Administration shared that particles of the bird flu virus were detected in some samples of pasteurized milk, but noted that in the form it was detected, it is not a threat to humans. Amazon.com's cloud computing arm said it would invest $11 billion in Indiana to build data centers, marking the state's largest capital investment and promising at least 1,000 jobs. The announcement by Amazon Web Services this morning builds on the online retail giant's already strong presence in the state, where it employs 26,000 full and part-time staff. Authorities in Colorado have accused 2 Indian restaurants of defrauding investors out of $380,000, and they're currently pursuing legal action to get the money back. The Colorado Division of Securities has filed a lawsuit against 2 Indian restaurants, Bombay Clay Oven and Saucy Bombay, and that lawsuit claims that the owners operating under the Bombay Group used half-truths and lies to persuade investors to fund their ambitious plan for nationwide expansion. The 2024 NFL Draft kicks off tonight, live from downtown Detroit. Round 1 will be held tonight, rounds 2 and 3 tomorrow, and the final 4 rounds on Saturday. The MLB All-Star Legacy Project announcing its investments in the North Texas area to the tune of $7 million. The DFW region will see improvements to many facilities across the area, investments that coincide with the Rangers hosting the MLB All-Star Game in July. Dallas City Hall wooing the North Texas WNBA franchise from Arlington to the historic but aging Dallas Memorial Auditorium, which is attached to the city's K. Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center. Interest in women's basketball spiking with the popularity of Iowa's record-setting Caitlin Clark, who was drafted by the WNBA's Indiana Fever to begin her pro career. The Dallas leaders hoping to lure the team to Dallas with nearly $20 million package of incentives appearing on the Dallas City Council agenda. And Dallas Memorial Auditorium seats about 10,000 fans, which would give the Wings room to grow their attendance, which averaged about 4,600 this past season. Dallas City Council approving a resolution for the Dallas Wings to play in the city, the WNBA franchise currently playing its home games in Arlington. And the measure is a 15-year use agreement for the Wings to play at the Dallas Memorial Auditorium in downtown Dallas. The government of the Democratic Republic of Congo is accusing Apple of using illegally exploited minerals extracted from the country's embattled east in its products. And a Russian court has sided with the state-run lender VTB Bank in its efforts to recoup $439.5 million from JP Morgan Chase that the American lender froze in U.S. accounts after the Ukraine invasion. After years of fits and starts, Venezuela is setting the stage for one of the largest and most complex debt restructurings in decades, unwinding a $154 billion web of defaulted bonds, loans, and legal judgments owed to creditors from Wall Street to Russia. President Nicolas Maduro's government recently hiring Rothschild and Company as a financial advisor, marking a first step in a massive undertaking that's likely to drag on for years. Officials from TikTok vowing to file a legal challenge against a new law requiring its China-based parent company ByteDance to sell the platform or withdraw from the U.S. market within 270 days. And now that President Biden has signed that off on a law that could expel TikTok from the U.S. market, Beijing must decide how best to retaliate over an attack on the world's most valuable startup. According to a recent study by the National Foundation for American Policy, a policy think tank, highly skilled foreign nationals, including international students, have been choosing Canada over America because it is difficult to gain an H-1B visa or permanent residence in the U.S. and easier to work in temporary status and acquire permanent residence in Canada. And it is... In the short term, there will be an impact on Indian student applications due to the diplomatic issues between India and Canada. India's IT sector is witnessing a resurgence in contractual hiring, signaling a potential upturn in demand for IT services. And this development comes after a year of muted demand, which led to reduced hiring and even layoffs by some IT companies, resulting in a decrease in their bench strength. The Reserve Bank of India's decision to temporarily halt Kotak Mahindra's bank's onboarding of new customers through online and mobile banking channels, as well as the issuance of new credit cards, has led to a significant drop in the bank's share price, and the stock fell by up to 10% at the Bombay Stock Exchange today as investors reacted negatively to this news. Tech Mahindra, meanwhile, the fifth largest software company in the country, reported fourth quarter revenue below analyst estimates today due to weakness in its communications and media segment as macro headwinds weighed on overall demand. Honeywell today announced its hydrocracking technology can be used to produce sustainable aviation fuel from biomass, helping to make sustainable aviation fuel that is 90% less carbon intensive than traditional fossil-based jet fuels. Swiggy A food and grocery delivery company based in Bengaluru has received approval from its shareholders for an IPO. According to regulatory filings, the company plans to raise about $450 million through new shares and another $800 million through an offer for sale. The successful completion of the 18,000 crore rupee follow-on public offer marks the beginning of Vodafone Idea 2.0, which will stage a smart turnaround, according to Aditya Birla. The group chairman Kumar Mangalam Birla said, and praised Prime Minister Modi and Telecom Minister Ashwani Vaishnav for a conducive policy environment which encourages investment, innovation and competition. As the country prepares for the second phase of the Lok Sabha elections this year, certain cities will have bank holidays, and that'll be tomorrow. Banks in some cities will be closed because of the Lok Sabha elections, as per the Reserve Bank of India holiday calendar for this year. Apple growers in Himachal Pradesh will only use universal carton size of 20 kilogram capacity for packaging from the upcoming apple season, according to the state government in Simla. The state government had implemented the decision to sell apples by weight and not by boxes during last year's apple season and promised to use only universal cartons for this season. Nobel laureate Malala Yousafzai has faced a backlash after the premiere of a Broadway musical she co-produced with former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. The musical is titled Suffs and playing in New York since last week, depicts the American women's suffrage campaign for the right to vote in the 20th century. However, she, who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2014, has been condemned by some for partnering with Hillary Clinton, an outspoken supporter of Israel's military offensive against Hamas that has killed over 34,000 Palestinians. President Zardari called on Chinese and Australian investors to capitalize on opportunities across various sectors in Pakistan, including agriculture, trade, economy, and infrastructure. Technology divides us, and according to this new UNDP report on Pakistan titled Doing Digital for Development, access, adopt, anticipate, accelerate. Noticeable differences in human development can be seen between those districts that have embraced digital transformation compared to those that have lagged behind. Over half of the country still has no access to the internet, and its women remain grossly underserved. Of the women who do not have access to digital technologies, 83.5% say their phone ownership is policed by their spouses or parents. Meanwhile, digital development among the richest 20% of its population is 15 times greater than its poorest quintile. Clearly, digital access has become a marker of privilege in Pakistan. Domestic bonds have proven more attractive to foreign investors than the record-breaking equity market during the first 9 days of the current month. And this was a report by the State Bank of Pakistan today that foreign investments in treasury bills are up. Considered to be one of the first cases in the history of Pakistan, the Rawalpindi Drug Court has awarded imprisonment and heavy fines to the CEO and other employees of a pharmaceutical company in a case involving a medicine that was found to be substandard. And the company is GlaxoSmithKline, which is considered one of the most credible and well-reputed companies in Pakistan and across the globe, has denied any wrongdoing in the matter and announced its intention to challenge the judgment before the appellate forum. A day after Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb called for broadening the tax net and expressed concerns over the delay in the cases of tax recoveries, the government tabled a bill in the National Assembly to expedite the process of the recovery of over 2 trillion rupees held up in litigation before the Appellate Tribunal Inland Revenue. And as Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif sat down with the business community to find ways to uplift the economy through exports, his resolve was met with apprehensions from industry leaders who said it was almost impossible to do business under the current circumstances, particularly with high energy costs and inconsistent government policies. He had arrived in the port city on his maiden visit after his election and said the meeting was an attempt to listen to the brilliant minds of business, absorb what they say and put it into action. The Islamabad High Court this morning suspended till the 6th of May a recent city administration notification that had reduced the prices of roti. The Punjab government had slashed the price of roti, followed by a similar decision by the Islamabad administration. However, the All Pakistan Naan-Bais Association has rejected that move. Domestic sugar prices have risen by 10 rupees to 150 rupees per kilogram in different parts of the country amid reports that the government is under pressure from millers to allow the export of 1 million to 1.5 million tons of the commodity. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the financial news for you. And we do have the final segment of your program coming up in just a minute. The final segment of our program today, and for it and all the segments that we do on community radio networks, I have huge thanks going out to Discount Power, to Houston EB5, to the Ahluwalia Law Offices, the Wyndham Hotel in Irving, to Digital X-Force, Kinzer Law, My Kalachi, Ruchi Palace by My Kalachi, Sri Vimal, Vimal's Venue, Eggholic, Mystic Mandala, and Flash Brush Productions. This morning has started mild and muggy with temperatures in 70 degrees and extensive low cloud cover, and this first in a series of disturbances will head into the Central Plains states this afternoon, sparking numerous showers and severe storms well to the west and north of us. And the worst of it looks to be in the eastern Texas Panhandle, western Oklahoma, and in Kansas. All modes of severe weather are possible in those areas. It's this area of storms that will head towards North Texas by tomorrow morning in a weakened state, and there could be some gusty winds and small hail during the morning commute tomorrow. Everything should press east of us by noon tomorrow, and more storms may develop east of DFW in the afternoon tomorrow and the evening, but most of the area will stay dry. Afternoon highs on today and tomorrow will reach the low 80s. But if you have outdoor weekend plans, stay weather aware late Saturday afternoon and through early Sunday morning. That's our greatest chance of severe storms across North Texas. And we'll keep you updated right here on Community Radio Networks. Meanwhile, as we head into the weekend, of course, we have a lot of events that are happening here during the week. One of the things I want to remind you about is to go vote. Early voting has started, and election day is on the 4th of May. And EarthX 2024, that is going on at the Hilton Anatole. It is on till tomorrow. Today, ladies and gentlemen, is day 4. And it is the topic is oceans, the blue economy, and philanthropy. You will hear from business, academic, and political leaders in the Southwest and Mexico who are stepping up. Learn the 6 most powerful steps to save oceans. Meet 30 ultra-high net worth families. Learn how 10 brands using their buying power to protect oceans and climate. That's the topic for today. At the Hilton Anatole, it is EarthX 2024, the Congress of Conferences that is going on, and we do request that you all go and attend that event happening this week. Also want you all to know that we have tomorrow Jeet Ka Safar with Amex, the champions of the 2019 T20 World Cup, who are going to be in Dallas tomorrow. And for more information on that event, you can call Andy Lalani. His number is 817-883-3333. Umrao Jan Ada has one show tomorrow and one show on Saturday, both at the Dallas Music Hall. And it is Neetu Chandra who is presenting Umrao Jan Ada. It's based on the novel written by Mirza Hadi Ruswa. It's a Western musical play in the Broadway style. And it is happening tomorrow as well as Saturday. Your tickets are available at Ticketmaster. The Festival of Joy is happening on Saturday from 11 to 9, where you can experience the bhakti traditions of ancient India at the Clyde Warren Park. Festivalofjoydallas.com is the website for those that need more information, but there will be a Rath Yatra parade in downtown Dallas, an evening concert, a vegetarian street food, kirtan, yoga and meditation, a free vegan feast, children's activities, henna and face painting, and plenty more happening out there. And that is at the Festival of Joy on Saturday at the Clyde Warren Park. We have a Yoga for Unity event that is happening on the 27th, and that is Saturday at 4 o'clock at the Radha Krishna Temple in Allen. Yoga for Unity fosters collaboration among authentic yoga institutions to raise awareness of yoga resources and teachers. And that will be happening this Saturday. The event will be launched at 4 o'clock, recognizing collaborating organizations and leaders, followed by a 20 to 30-minute demonstration session of asana, pranayam, and dhyana. And then the Festival of India by the Lions, Dallas Indian Lions Club. It is being brought to you for the 39th year. Dallas Indian Lions Club's 39th annual celebration of the Festival of India happening this Sunday. And then as we step into May, the DFW Gujarati Samaj is presenting a non-stop comedy drama with renowned artist Sri Sanjay Goradia, 5th of May at 5 o'clock at the McKinney North High School, with light refreshments available for purchase. DFW Gujarati Samaj's non-stop comedy drama with Sri Sanjay Goradia on the 5th of May at 5 o'clock at the McKinney North High School. Also, Hassan Sumro, in association with the Sheesh Eatery and Lounge, is presenting Moms and Momos, celebrating moms in a fun-filled contest hosted by the one and only Hina Dilpazir. This is happening on the 9th, and it is a special Mother's Day event. There will be Mother's prizes given out to the most inspirational mom, the best hairstyle, super mom, juggling it all, the best mother figure, funniest mom moments, best dressed mom, most melodious mom, balancing business and family, and the best stylish mom, and also the best grandma. All this happening on the 9th of May at the Sheesh Eatery and Lounge, presented by Hassan Sumro. We do have Indian Idol's Intense Tour on Friday, the 10th of May at the Grand Center. And Radhika Chopra is bringing to you an evening of ghazals and geets by her. And that's on Saturday, the 11th of May. And it is going to be at the Plaza Theatre in Garland. Let me give you a number for you to call if you need more information. 408-412-1238. Unforgettable 90s, Kumar Shanu and Sadhana Sargam live in concert on the 12th of May at the Credit Union of Texas Event Center in Allen. We have Junoon performing in Dallas on the 19th of May at the Raleigh Underground. And the U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce is having their annual technology conference on the 23rd. It is AICon 2024, incorporating new tech and AI. In the morning, keynote speaker is Chakri Gautamakulla, the CEO and co-founder of O9 Solutions. And afternoon keynote is George Baker, Senior, founder and chairman of Park Hub. This is from 9:30 to 2:30 at the Renaissance Hotel in Addison, and we do hope that you can attend that. For more information, you can go to US-India Chamber of Commerce website, usicoc.org. Taste of the Cowboys 20th anniversary is happening on the 7th of June at the Ford Center at the Star in Frisco. And a 2-day holistic festival by Mystic Mandala, Life and Wellness Festival for on the 8th and 9th of June at the Plano Nature and Retreat Center. For booths and registration and more information, you can call Vijay. His number is 972-750-1419. Badshah's Pagal Tour coming to the Curtis Culwell Center on the 14th of June, and Shreya Ghoshal will be at the Curtis Culwell Center on the 16th of June. Nan's Vision is bringing you a glamorous night with Shilpa Shetty on the 29th of June, and I do want to thank Nanda Tiwari for having a very, very beautiful event last night, and that was a meet and greet with Neetu Chandra, who is playing Umrao Jan this weekend in those Broadway-style plays that are happening at the Dallas Music Hall. And this was a great event where she she speaks so well and was very beautiful out there, the way she mixed with all the people who were present at this meet and greet last night. Let's get you some stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date, which is the 25th of April, and then we will end our show for today. Remember, it was in 1790. No, you don't remember, I'll tell you. Daniel Defoe's fictional work, The Life and Strange Adventures of Robinson Crusoe, was published, and that book about a shipwrecked sailor who spends 28 years on a deserted island, based on the experiences of shipwreck victims and of Alexander Selkirk, a Scottish sailor who spent 4 years on a small island of the coast of South America in the early 1700s. Like his hero Crusoe, Daniel Defoe was an ordinary middle-class Englishman, not an educated member of the nobility like most writers at the time, and he established himself as a small merchant but went bankrupt and turned to political pamphleteering to support himself. He set up the Review, which he edited and wrote, and it wasn't until he was nearly 60 that he began writing fiction. His other works include Moll Flanders, Roxana, and it was his work called The Life and Strange Adventures of Robinson Crusoe that was published on today's date in the year 1719. He died in London in 1731, a day before the 12th anniversary of Robinson Crusoe's publication. At Port Said in Egypt, ground is broken for the Suez Canal, an artificial waterway intended to stretch 101 miles across the Isthmus of Suez and connect the Mediterranean and the Red Seas. Ferdinand de Lesseps, the French diplomat who organized this colossal undertaking, delivered the pickaxe blow that inaugurated the construction on today's date in the year 1859. Canals have been built on the Suez region, which connects the continents of Asia and Africa since ancient times. But it was the Suez Canal that broke ground on today's date. It opened and the Suez was only 25 feet deep, 72 feet wide at the bottom and 200 to 300 feet wide at the surface. But consequently, fewer than 500 ships navigated it in the first full year of operation. But then it became one of the world's most heavily traveled shipping lanes. And that, of course, you all know, is the Suez Canal. In 1975, Egyptian President Anwar Sadat reopened the canal as a gesture of peace after talks with Israel, and today dozens of ships navigate the canal daily, carrying more than 300 million tons of goods a year. About 3 years ago, the Suez Canal was blocked for 6 days after a massive container vessel got stuck out there. It was the groundbreaking for the Suez Canal that happened on today's date in 1859. 59. And in 1915, on today's date, a week after the Anglo-French naval attacks on the Dardanelles end in dismal failure, the Allies launch a large-scale land invasion of the Gallipoli Peninsula, the Turkish-controlled landmass bordering the northern side of the Dardanelles. It was 2 months after Turkey entered World War I on the side of the Central Powers that Russia appealed to Britain to defend it against attacks by the Ottoman army in the Caucasus. And Lord Kitchener, Britain's Secretary of State for War, told Winston Churchill, the First Lord of the Admiralty, that no troops were available to help the Russians and that the only place where they could demonstrate their support was at the Dardanelles to prevent Ottoman troops from moving east to the Caucasus. First Sea Lord John Fisher advocated a joint Army-Navy attack, and the Allies began that invasion on today's date in 1915. And on the 25th of April in 1917, it was jazz legend Ella Fitzgerald who was born in Virginia. She, ladies and gentlemen, was called the First Lady of Song, an honor whose meaning is captured in a compliment paid to her by the great composer Ira Gershwin. I never knew how good our songs were until I heard Ella Fitzgerald sing them. The First Lady of Song. Quite apart from the quality of her voice, there was this warmth and intelligence behind it that gave even melancholy songs a plausible tilt towards optimism.
Just a little yellow basket.
Billie Holiday or Frank Sinatra might fully inhabit the dark side of a torch song, but Fitzgerald, in the words of the critic Frank Rich, could turn any song into an oxygen rush of bouncing melody that reached the listener's ears as pure, untroubled joy, the eternally young sound of a young country.
I listened to my voice then, and it sounds like what I was, a little girl, and my voice was so thin and small, and I'm grateful for those thin, small, childish voice, because without that, nothing could have happened.
She was born on today's date in 1917 and died in 1996 at the age of 79 in Beverly Hills, California. Ella Fitzgerald, the First Lady of Song.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
On the 25th of April in 1945, President Harry Truman learns the full details of the Manhattan Project, in which scientists are attempting to create the first atomic bomb. The information thrust upon him a momentous decision: whether or not to use the world's first weapon of mass destruction. America's secret development of the atomic bomb had begun in 1939 with then-President Franklin Roosevelt's support, and the project was so secret that FDR did not even inform his fourth-term Vice President Truman that it existed. In fact, when Truman's senatorial investigations into war production expenditures led him to ask questions about a suspicious plant in Minneapolis which was secretly connected with the Manhattan Project, Truman received a stern phone call from FDR's Secretary of War, Harry Stimson, warning him not to inquire further. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Harry Truman, who learned the full details of this Manhattan Project on today's date in 1945. And of course, the first bomb was exploded over Hiroshima on the 6th of August in 1945, and a second on Nagasaki on the 9th of August that year. The Japanese quickly surrendered, although other nations have developed atomic bombs and nuclear technology since 1945. Truman remains the only world leader to have ever used an atomic bomb against an enemy. He was briefed on this Manhattan Project on today's date in 1945. Also, on the same day, 25th of April in 1945, 8 Russian armies completely encircled Berlin, linking up with the U.S. First Army Patrol, first on the western bank of the Elbe and then later in Torgau. Germany is, for all intents and purposes, Allied territory, and the Allies sounded the death knell of their common enemy by celebrating. In Moscow, news of the link-up between the two armies resulted in a 324-gun salute. And in New York, crowds burst into song and dance in the middle of Times Square. As among the Soviet commanders who participated in this historic meeting of the two armies was the renowned Russian Marshal Georgy Zhukov, who warned a skeptical Stalin that Germany posed a serious threat to the Soviet Union. Zhukov would become invaluable in battling German forces with Russia, Stalingrad and Moscow. And without, it was also Zhukov who would demand and receive unconditional surrender of Berlin from German General Krebs less than a week after encircling the German capital. That happened on today's date in 1945. And on April the 25th in 1950, the Boston Celtics make Chuck Cooper, an All-American forward, the first African-American picked in NBA draft. And with that selection, the first pick in the second round, Cooper breaks the NBA's color barrier and changes the league for the better. It is Chuck Cooper, the All-American forward, that became the first African-American picked in an NBA draft. And on the 25th of April in 1974, the NFL adopts a new overtime rule for regular season games to prevent tie games. The rule change comes as part of sweeping efforts to improve the action and tempo of the games. The league also moves goalposts from the front to the back of the end zone and limits contact offensive players that can make with receivers. Most fans dislike ties, so do players. It's not losing, but it's damn sure not winning. That was what was said when the NFL adopted overtime for regular season games on today's date in 1974. And then in 1980, a Danair Boeing 727 carrying British tourists to the Canary Islands crashes and kills all 146 on board. On the 25th of April in 1980, and this terrible crash came 3 years after another even deadlier accident at the Canary Islands airport, where a KLM jumbo jet had collided with a Pan Am plane on the runway, and 570 people were killed. And that collision occurred when communication problems between the planes and air traffic controllers exacerbated already dangerous foggy conditions. Due to the intensely cloudy condition, the pilots never saw the mountain directly in front of them. On today's date, in 1980, and all 146 people were killed on impact when the jet crashed directly into the side of the mountain. James Richardson walks out of a Florida prison 21 years after being wrongfully convicted of killing his 7 children. Special Prosecutor Janet Reno agreed to the release after evidence showed that the conviction resulted from misconduct by the prosecutor. In addition, neighbor Betsy Reese had confessed to the crime to a nursing home employee. It was on today's date in 1989 that this father is exonerated after 21 years in prison. In 1989, after his release, the governor of Florida ordered an investigation into the prosecutor's office to discover what prompted the miscarriage of justice. And the crew of the U.S. Space Shuttle Discovery places the Hubble Space Telescope, a long-term space-based observatory, into a low orbit around the Earth. On the 25th of April, in 1980, the space telescope, conceived in the 40s, designed in the 70s, and built in the 80s, was designed to give astronomers an unparalleled view of the solar system, the galaxy, and the universe. Initially, Hubble's operators suffered a setback when a lens aberration was discovered, but a repair mission by spacewalking astronauts successfully fixed that problem in 93, and the Hubble began sending back its first breathtaking images of the universe. Free of atmospheric distortions, Hubble has a resolution 10 times that of ground-based observatories. About the size of a bus, this telescope is solar-powered and orbits Earth once every 97 minutes. Among its many astronomical achievements, Hubble has been used to record a comet's collision with Jupiter, provide a direct look at the surface of Pluto, view distant galaxies, gas clouds, and black holes, and see billions of years into the universe's past. And in celebration of its 34th anniversary today, NASA's Hubble Space Telescope has once again wowed astronomers today and space enthusiasts alike by capturing an extraordinary image of the Little Dumbbell Nebula. This latest image offers a vivid glimpse into the complexities of a planetary nebula, demonstrating the Hubble's enduring capabilities in this extended mission. It was the Hubble Space Telescope that was placed in orbit on today's date in 1990. And in 2014, on the 25th of April, officials from Flint, Michigan switched the city's water supply to the Flint River as a cost-cutting measure for the struggling city. In doing so, they unwittingly introduced lead-poisoned water into homes in what would become a massive public health crisis. And the Problem started when officials decided to switch that water supply from the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department to the Carignan Water Authority to save money for the economically struggling city. Before that connection could be built, the city turned to the Flint River as a temporary water source. And it was by the month of May that year, 2014, that residents were complaining that the brown water flowing into their homes looked and smelled weird. But the largely majority African American and poor citizens went ignored by officials. In August, E. coli and coliform bacteria were detected in Flint's water. And from there, a leaked memo from the EPA and several independent studies warned of dangerous levels of lead in the water. Although the city switched their water supply back in 2015, the damage to the pipes had already been done. And after months of denial and dodging, the mayor, the governor, and the president declared a state of emergency in Flint, Michigan. Free water bottles and filters were provided to residents to help them cope. Unfortunately, this crisis didn't end there for Flint residents. Over a year later, people were still using bottled water to cook, drink, and even brush their teeth. The city's recovery has been slow as it works to replace 30,000 lead pipes. And it is by 2017 that reports showed that the water in most homes was generally safe, but many residents still don't trust what comes out of their tap. In the aftermath, residents filed a class action lawsuit, and 9 officials, including then Michigan Governor Rick Snyder, were charged with 34 felony counts and 7 misdemeanors. In other cases, and investigations are ongoing. The Flint water crisis began on today's date in 2014. And it was on today's date in 2015 that a magnitude 7.8 earthquake tears through Nepal, killing nearly 9,000 people and injuring 16,800. It was the worst such earthquake for the Asian country since 1934. Struck shortly before noon, but the devastation continued as several dozen aftershocks caused even more destruction. Overall, Nepal was shaken by hundreds of aftershocks, the largest striking at a 7.3 magnitude on the 12th of May. And the quake also induced an avalanche on Mount Everest that killed 19 people. By the time the tremors stopped, more than 800,000 homes were destroyed and more than 298,000 were damaged. The quake also damaged several iconic monuments like the capital's Darbar Square. In all, 2.8 million people were displaced, made homeless by this devastation or by their fear of more tremors. And of these, countless numbers moved into tent cities, too afraid to return to their homes. The UN estimated 8 million people in total. Nearly a third of Nepal's population were affected by the quake and its aftershocks, and the Nepalese government declared that state of emergency right after the initial shocks hit, and virtually the entire army took to the streets in a search and rescue operation. Dozens of countries and the UN pitched in with aid and fundraising. Unfortunately, repair efforts met with many obstacles along the way. Congestion, along with lack of transportation such as trucks and helicopters, made reaching remote villages very challenging. Political squabbles and a lack of supplies slowed the rebuilding efforts as well. It was on today's date, the 25th of April in 2015, this 7.8 magnitude earthquake tore through Nepal, killing 9,000 people and injuring 16,800, the worst such earthquake for Nepal since 1934. Ladies and gentlemen, these were some stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date, the 25th of April. I hope you enjoyed them, and that will bring us to the end of our show today. For those of you who'd like to reach me directly, my number is 214-675-1754.